The West Side now has one fewer grocery store after Aldi abruptly shuttered its West Garfield Park location last month. Residents say the closure worsens the area's already inequitable access to food. This often means residents, mostly in black and brown communities, have to travel much further, sometimes leaving their neighborhoods to get the food they need. We spoke with Teron Hawk, a resident of West Garfield Park. He lives right behind the now former grocery store, and here's a bit of what he said.
I have to go all the way to Halsted and Madison. I'm 3800 West, and I think that's 800 West to Whole Foods on Halsted and Madison. We have a store directly across the street from Aldi's, has a sign that says Madison Supermarket, but they're not a supermarket. They're like a candy store, a cigarette store. Can't buy a loaf of bread there. Can't buy a gallon of milk there.
And joining us now to discuss how this impacts communities and what can be done to address it are Angela Odoms-Young, associate professor at Cornell University in the Division of Nutritional Sciences. She previously worked at UIC and remains based here in Chicago. And Ruby Ferguson, food equity policy lead for the city of Chicago. Thanks to you both for joining us. So first, Angela Odoms-Young, let's start with you, please. What we've described is often called a food desert, though many advocates are arguing that this should be considered food apartheid instead. Explain that to us, please.
Yeah, I think it's really important to think about the source. We know that limited food access in communities of color is really rooted in social and structural oppression. And so part of this thinking that is just naturally occurring is not the case. It really is systemic factors that play a role in deciding where certain types of resources are located and where they're not located.
Communities on the South and West Side, mostly black and brown communities, they've faced, decades of disinvestment. We know this. Ruby Ferguson, what impact has this had on access to food for the people in those neighborhoods?
Yeah, so we have to look at our food system as a whole and think about affordability, accessibility, and also the cultural relevance of food, right? So when we think about community, when we think about food, that's celebrations for barbecues, that's Thanksgiving, that's birthday cakes. And so when you think about the additional layers of mental stress that get put on putting food on the dinner table, we're just exacerbating unhealthy conditions that already existed.
Now, when we spoke to resident Teron Hawk, he said that he uses an electric bike to get around, but it doesn't have a basket to carry groceries. Here's a little bit more of him.
I have to Uber down to the store when I have to change my whole routine when it comes to groceries now. I could go to Aldi's 3 or 4 times a day and just get those little things that will sustain me for a month, and now that's gone, and I miss them. I really do.
Angela, how much of Chicago faces food ecosystems similar to what Teron Hawk experiences now?
Unfortunately, a significant amount. I think part of the way that we're thinking about it, even talking about the fact that one Aldi left a community, that is really upsetting. Listening to the description from the community resident about how this departure of Aldi has impacted his shopping pattern and just the additional stress that's been put on him because of this issue. And this is just a very common story. Unfortunately, it's not only in Chicago, it's across the country. When you look at particularly Black communities and their access to food. And so partly, if we take a snapshot of a food ecosystem, not just a supermarket, then we could say that the majority of communities are in this situation because there is no diversity of food retail in most Black communities.
And it sounds like the fact that this one grocery store has left and Aldi is indicative, and the impact that it's having is indicative of a problem that already existed for people there. Ruby, how does this impact a community's health?
Yeah, so when we think about health, right? It's agency to have choice about what you consume daily. It's access to fresh fruits and vegetables. It's not having to manage thinking about where you're shopping for dinner, right? And so when one grocery store is causing an entire community to feel like they don't have access to fresh and healthy foods, it makes it very challenging to consider your health as a whole.
Angela, how can this be addressed? Is it just about a matter of adding more grocery stores? What needs to be done?
No, I think it's a matter of looking at food and planning, looking at food when we think about economic investments in communities. It's overall community development. Grocery stores tend to be an anchor for other types of retail development, and it also brings jobs. So it's estimated that there's about 25 jobs for every 10,000 square feet of store space. And so a grocery store could bring in 150 or 200 jobs. And so we need to think about an entire community, not just, okay, we're going to locate one store. And I hate to always use the comparison to Lincoln Park, but if the Aldi in Lincoln Park closed, it probably wouldn't even be a huge story because of the amount of food retail, restaurants, and other food related businesses that are located in that community. So I think it's really important that we consider overall food retail and also food ownership within communities of color. Who owns it? What's there?
And Ruby, what is the Chicago Food Equity Council doing to address this?
Yeah, so I'm very excited to announce that with ARP funds, we were able to put in a proposal for a food equity approach. And so that includes starting a Chicago Good Food Fund, which gives us an opportunity for community to drive solutions to address food insecurity. So the premise behind this is that there will be funding opportunities that include technical assistance training to catalyze community-based solutions for issues. We know that every community solution is not going to be the same, and that when community solutions are driven by members of that space, they're more likely to last for longer. There are roots, there are teeth with that solution. So we're excited to announce that we'll have a Chicago Good Food Fund, as well as support for other elements of the food system like urban agriculture. So if we think about local fresh foods and how we get them in our community, how can we also support growers in the community to support culturally relevant foods for that community?
Okay, more to come on that. We look forward to hearing back from you on that. Ruby Ferguson and Angela Odoms Young, thanks to you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.